So we're ready. Welcome to another Light to the Journey. Glad that you have popped in. We already know that Rick has jumped in, and his wife Karen, I'm assuming, is with him. They're from Florida, so glad to have you guys. Good to have the Thompsons. I'm sure my wife will be getting on. She does that from time to time. I'm Pastor Carl Tenney, and I pastor here at Oak Hills. They have blessed me this week with just a love offering and a card, and felt very special. Next to me, you go to this church. You do own that, right? You own
I do, in fact. Yes.
This is Terry Husser, and he and his wife are a part of it. Back behind the... Go ahead and put it on you, Yusuf. Not too many people get to see who Yusuf is. Yusuf. Yusuf is the production manager for tonight. We're giving Terry's wife, Linda, a break. And so this is Yusuf.
She's back there.
And, what's that? She's not taking it.
She's back there.
Yeah, Linda is back there. She's making sure Yusuf does his job right. How do you like that, Yusuf? All right.
It works.
And we're glad that we're grateful that you've stopped in and spent some time with us. I would share with you before we get started that, and most of you know this, but just in case you're just getting on, you've not been on with us, on our website, if you logged on Facebook, if you go to our website, discoveroakhills.com, you'll find Chatwing there. And in Chatwing, you can type in your notes, make comments, ask questions. We've had good questions before, and that kind of thing. So just want to make you aware of that. You can also log in Chatwing through Facebook and that kind of thing. So just wanted to share that with you. It's been a busy week with politics. Look at him. And you know what? I don't think...
Let's go to the demons. Speaking of top politics.
Terry asked me...
Let's jump right to the demons.
Terry asked me, the subject for this is out of this morning's... and Terry asked me if... we were going to talk about demons tonight. So I don't know if we're going to do that. But you were equating politics and demons, right?
Well, no. The story that you opened your message with, to me, is one of the more interesting stories in the Bible. It is. There's just so much going on there that you just scratch your head. It's like...
Well, there is a lot going on there. Just a whole lot. So you've studied this text. For our guest, we're actually in Luke, the 8th chapter. And I think starts with the 26th verse and kind of going through the 39th, if memory serves me correctly. And we're going to talk about that tonight and just have some feedback. So I hope some of you will ask questions or give your comments and thought process. So this morning, the message was about love. Isn't it interesting how I could get love out of that text? Have you ever heard it preached like that? No, you've never heard it.
No.
No. So, what's your takeaways, Terry? I mean, what would there's two things I always ask you. What was your takeaway, or what would you have said that I didn't say, kind of thing. And sometimes you touch on both. Sometimes you touch on one, either or. So, what did you think of the message? Be nice.
It was really good. I mean, the way you put it together and brought it forth, starting out with that.
Well, actually, I started out with what was happening in front of it, too, though.
Right.
Yeah.
And how even someone as demonized and messed up as that was, Legion,
Mm-hmm.
that Jesus still loved and cared about him that much. And they're because different versions of the Bible will say that he was demonized or possessed or whatever, but in this case, some of the teachings that I've heard on it was that, like, people will say Christians can't be possessed, and that's true, because even here, possessed means owned by.
Uh-huh.
If this, well, do you call them a gentleman when they run around in the graveyards naked? I don't know.
But society.
But
yes, he was
even still that important to Jesus.
Yes.
And had he been possessed, that means owned by Satan, say even Jesus couldn't have, cast those demons out of him if he was owned by Satan. So, part of your message was to show that no matter how hopeless it seems or how messed up you are,
Yes.
to Jesus, it's no big deal. It's just another day's work.
Yeah.
So
It's another.
It was
It's
excellent.
another day down
Yeah,
at the docks.
Yeah, there's just nothing that's totally, or nobody that's totally
Awesome.
hopeless.
That is probably the one thing that I wanted to communicate more than anything else today is no matter how messed up, God's love drives him to us, and will do that.
And of course, the accuser, that's his job to tell you, you are so hopelessly messed up
Yeah.
that God could never love you. You can never be set free. You can never get away from this. And that, of course, that's why they call him the accuser of the brethren.
For our audience, now we're talking about this because we've just gone over this, but
Right.
probably should be a good
Yeah,
time
we don't
right
know
now.
what we're talking
Stop and at least in my words, and if you want to follow along, I'm not going to read it to you. I'd rather tell it. It goes faster. First of all, this text is out of Luke, the 8th chapter, starting with verse 26. And what you see is Jesus is landing. Jesus had gone across, and it's interesting because that's when, he calms the storms. He's got disciples with him, so he's not by himself. It almost reads like he's by himself when you read through this thing. But he gets to the other shore. He gets out. I suspect that he is trying to. I mean, this is a teaching moment for disciples.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? Just like this morning was a teaching moment, that no matter how bad you get. But for disciples, that there is nobody who out there who isn't worthy of receiving the gospel and the grace and the love of God. This guy is, for those of you, he gets off, he crosses the sea overnight, gets out of the boat. He's in a region that is, and I don't know, I always have this vision in my head, these got to climb up some embankments just by given that some pigs could go over cliffs, that they're making their way up it's upwards, and he makes his way up into a graveyard of places, the tombs kind of thing. And there's this guy out there. He's naked. You know what we do with naked men in the public, right? He's naked. He's like wild. He is, and you're right. Demon possession is. If it wasn't possible, we wouldn't be reading this account. But to our viewers, Jesus casts out these demons into a herd of pigs, and the demon's name. It isn't the guy's name, but it's the demon's name is Legion, which means I'm trying to remember what legions was it 1,000 or was it 100?
It's a bunch.
It's a bunch. Okay, you don't remember either. Then.
Oh, I don't.
Okay, but just a lot of demons, and Jesus is casting them out, and the pig herders. They got to be. And I when I preached this to Harry, were you surprised that I didn't go about the value of all the pigs? Because it places a value. It gives us a sense of how valuable we are to God. A lot of times I do that. I didn't do that today at all. I wasn't going there. But Jesus then, this guy is, when the pig herders go out, and I think when you read this, it says that they went and they told it in the villages, and they told it in the town, and they told it on the countryside. They're trying, and I think they're kind of, that's the way we are, protecting their job. They just lost their herd. That we didn't lose a herd. It was that Jesus guy who did this. It's his fault. They're just trying to. I think that's my guess. I'm reading into it, but as I read into it, they're worried about their job. Obviously it wasn't their herd, and they're worried about their job. So they're stirring it up. People come out to see what, is this really true? You know how it is. Or is this really true? They come out, they take the role of critics, they can't believe. But what they find is this guy who is dressed. They tried chaining him up. They tried binding him up. Nothing could lock this guy up. This is one of those guys that you don't want to be around. He's terrifying. And he's sitting there, he's calm, he's in his right mind, he's dressed, he's acting normal. And it's like, can this guy really be normal? But that's what Jesus can do for us. And so to our audience, that's kind of what's going on. I find it amazing. The story goes on. The people beg Jesus, to leave. You got to wonder who's really demon possessed.
Well, I guess if I'm Jewish and I'm raising pigs and somebody comes and exposes me.
Well, I don't think the crowd was necessarily Jewish,
Mm-hmm.
or they wouldn't be raising pigs. It was more of a Gentile group, but they don't want Jesus around. And it's interesting that a lot of places where we are, and I alluded to it today, Christmas time. How many nativity scenes can we put up with the baby Jesus? I don't know why he's so threatening, but he's threatening.
Yeah.
Take away in our courts. I mean, this all applies to real day stuff. I know we're talking about demons, but society, take away the Ten Commandments out of our. Why would we want anything less than the Ten Commandments in our judicial system to remind our judges, of what's God wants and what's right and what's good for mankind. The Ten Commandments really help us how to deal one with another. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not steal. He doesn't want us taking other. He doesn't want me taking your glasses and swapping them with mine just because I like yours better. That's just how it is. Your Bible looks nicer.
That Bible, by the way, tells me that a legion is 3,000 to 6,000 soldiers.
3,000 to 6,000. Boy,
So,
did I get that wrong.
That's a bunch of demons.
Yeah, for they were many, and that's what my Bible said. They were many, a lot. But what I was driving at, this guy, society doesn't want him. It's kind of, when I think about this, what comes to my mind is Jeffrey Dahmer's. I don't know why. Lock that guy up, get him out of here, get him away. We're happy he's out at the tombs, chain him up and keep him there, get him out of our sight. That's what's going on. And what we find, folks, is that Jesus intentionally leaves a bunch of ministry behind with what the world would think, well, they're dressed, they're reasonable, probably more fruitful there, probably better spend of, here we go, success. A better spend of the time would be back on the other side of the sea. I mean, think about it. There's hundreds of people there, people are getting healed, people are, and Jesus intentionally gets in the boat, takes his whole ministry team to minister to this one guy. But what that tells me, Terry, I'm preaching again, but what that tells me, what that tells me is that God loves each and every one of us so much that he could leave all that and head to a guy with 3,000 to 6,000 demons in him, and transform him. And he's transformed by love. And that was the message today. Is there any comments? You have to interrupt us because we do want.
Right. So far, not a lot. I just put on here, just ask any questions whenever.
Sure.
Anyone's.
So you
to ask.
you tonight when we started this thing out tonight, you're equating politics with demons. Do you think Jesus can take and straighten up our political system?
I think Jesus is still sticking to his "I gave you dominion." That means he gave us dominion.
Yeah. Here we are back to politics.
He won't intervene unless we pray really, really hard. He'll say, "Hey, I gave you what you needed."
If you were preaching this, would you have said something different today?
No, I think it was great.
Oh.
I mean,
okay.
I
mean, you just got done telling me you're like this expert on about demons and stuff, and asked me, "Are we going to talk about demons?" I mean, this is the text, though.
You had mentioned, and I've made this comment before about, the Ten Commandments, and I mentioned before how I like to, compare the Ten Commandments to like the crib, the baby crib. You put the baby in the crib to keep the baby from going over and pulling the pan of hot water down off of the stove onto him. So God gives us the Ten Commandments to protect us from those demons. You know, if we don't mess around and go by the 10 commandments and break those commandments, there's very little access that those demons have to us. But when we start messing around and going outside of the crib, so to speak, and breaking the 10 commandments, now we've given those spirits legal access to come in and start messing with us. And this is where we run into all these situations. And I believe myself, a Christian cannot be possessed, but we can be horribly oppressed. And I know everybody out there knows people that are Christians, and yet they're just absolutely tormented and bothered in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And so if we can avoid, and what's so frustrating to me is as you get a few more years on you and stuff and get to know more and more people, you see the destruction and the just the mess that the enemy makes of people's lives.
And he does it. He can do it. And Terry's not telling you guys, those of you review, and what he's not saying, and I'm going to take a moment to say it, is that you don't. Everything that in our lives that is bad or sinful is not demonic, caused by demons.
No, it's not.
Some of them's caused by our own bad choices.
Right.
We choose to sin. You know, and I was using this text, and I basically was balancing demonic and sin. You know, kind of in the same. I put them all in the same basket today, if you will, and I'm sure you picked up on that. But I put them all in the same basket because they both are destructive, and some of it's external, but we can invite that into our lives. I have no clue what this man did to get where he was. You know, I have no clue, but I know this: he was in a bad way, and nobody wanted him around, and God got in a boat, went through a storm, you know, through the night, after working hard all day before, tries to catch a nap in the boat. You know, they wake him up, don't you care about us? You know, and isn't that interesting that as they're going across the boat, that was one of the things they asked him. You know, here's the disciples who are walking with him all the time, or with him all the time. Don't you care? We're about to die here. Of course he cares. He cares so much that I wonder if it, you know, how I asked Peter when I see him, you know, I wonder if it occurred to them when they got to the other shore and they saw how much Jesus cared about this one guy, if they could connect the dots. I'm not sure we always connect the dots.
And would you have anybody but Jesus approach that? You see, personally, if I see some naked guy out there that people have chained up and he's broken those chains, and he's crazy?
Yeah, you want to put the
I'm not going anywhere near that graveyard.
Yeah.
I'll go 100 miles around a detour and stay away from that graveyard.
We'd be like, if we were doing ministry and that was our assignment.
that is scary. Yeah. That is very scary.
The picture I have in my head, Terry, is that Jesus gave us an assignment to go do that, and you and I, we'd be like little kids, you know. I'm not going there. That's haunted. That's bad.
You want to do this, Jesus?
Yeah, but Jesus did.
We do have a question. Ricky Thompson asks, do demons enter through sin? Are there other ways for demons to enter?
Do we want to go into that?
He asked.
There are many different ways. Generationally, there's like 4 different ways for sure. Generationally, they can come in if sins committed by your ancestors. Okay. They can come down and sin. And trauma, accidents. Demons like to take the opportunity. I feel this is why when we would minister in this area, we would always encourage people. One of the most precious gifts that God gives us is our own free will, and our minds. And if we knowingly, now this is my opinion, so and the people would probably be controversial, but if we knowingly and willingly give up control of our minds through the use of drugs, alcohol, things like that, to me that is a tremendous doorway opened. Because first off, if you look up now,
let me just clarify. Yeah, you're not talking about being on a prescription.
No, I'm on medication for high blood pressure.
Right.
But I want to point out that where do you go to get your medications? To a pharmacy. If you look up the word pharmacy in the Bible,
It's,
the first word that's going to pop up next to it is witchcraft.
Oh, yeah, no.
So,
Absolutely.
you know, it opens doors. So when you're knowingly and willingly giving up control of your mind, I believe that you're opening a door for the enemy. And the problem with the enemy is he's a really, really rude guest. He doesn't leave when you want him to usually. You know, once he's in.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's all different ways that, you know, it isn't just sin. Some of them it's something your ancestors did. And it can go down. So if you look it up in the Bible, it'll talk about the fourth generation. The curse can come down through the third and fourth generation. But if you research sexual sin, 10 generations. So you could have ancestors back even 10 generations where all of a sudden something pops up and starts going through you or your bloodline. It gets...
Yeah. It's good. I want to be careful here because anytime we get into this, you know, and we didn't stop to pray. I usually I usually stop and pray, but let's spin this back to God, okay?
Yeah.
Let's spin this back to God because He's who we're giving
Right.
glory. Let me just say though to Rick and to all of our listeners that, you know, there's no sin that God can't fix.
That's
There's
right.
there's no demonic oppression or possession that God can't cure, and that's the good news. That is really, really the good news.
And it's very simple to get rid of. You just pray and ask for forgiveness. And
You know, and I have just so our audience knows, because you've talked about it. You've said you've had some experience with, you know, the spiritual realms, the demonic spiritual realms. I've had some too, but I can't say that my life is just dominated there. That's not where my life is, you know. But I've had some of those go rounds that were satanic and demonic kind of things. I remember one period of my life in my first church where I was a lot younger in Christ, where, you know, I couldn't sleep for 3 days because of just that kind of, you know, dream life and that kind of stuff. And I knew it wasn't normal. I mean, it just wasn't normal. And I wasn't on drugs, you know, I wasn't taking prescription or anything like that. That's just kind of where it was. But that was a great question. Any more questions?
Not that I know of. I know someone. Okay, I guess she doesn't want to talk, but she had a comment earlier. But,
Oh, you have a comment?
It was earlier when we were talking about the possessed man, and so you just want to read that. It had to do with that.
she said that I believe that's why we need to be ready to share the gospel, no matter what type of people they may appear to be. Only God knows people's true hearts.
Yeah, you got to keep us up on the comments too.
Yeah, and I was going to, but I wasn't sure if she really wanted to chime into that. So
Yeah, and she's right. You know, as I was coming down to the close of this event with Jesus, which leads us there, by the way, and takes us pretty. You know, I made the comment and was closing with that whole thought process. You know, how did it strike you when I pointed out that Jesus, they want rid of Jesus, and yet he leaves this man behind, and the guy is begging Jesus, please let me go with you. I mean, I can't imagine being any different. I mean, what you've just done for me, I'm with you. You know, I'm with you. What you've just done for me, no one could do for me. No one, absolutely no one could do that for me. And I want to be with you. And Jesus says to him, he says, no, I want you to stay and tell others what God has done for you. And this is the same audience who's telling Jesus, get out of town, you know, pack up your bags and go. And here's a guy who's back to the same audience and telling them about what God has done for him. But what are they going to do? He's dressed. He's normal.
Yep, you're not going to dispute this.
You know, it's not going away. He's normal, and he's telling them, I'm telling you what God has done for me. He is giving, the gospel means, you know, good news. So he is giving good news to people who probably are just as tormented as he was. You know, I know we can look at it and say, 3,000. Are you kidding? Nobody could be more tormented than him. But I think when I look at my own life, the pre-Jesus, before I come to Christ, there's a lot of torment there. There's a lot of loneliness. There's a lot of angst, depression. There's just insecurity, bad self-worth. I mean, there's just what God has done in my life to turn all that around. That's bad. That's bad news. I mean, a psychologist today, going to any counselor, going to tell you that's bad. That's bad. So
We have another question.
Sure.
Karen asked, you stated that you do not believe Christians could be possessed but oppressed by demons. At what point and how can you define the difference?
Do I believe? Okay.
Do you want me to reread the question?
Yeah, reread the question.
You stated that you do not believe Christians could be possessed.
Oh no. We believe that Christians
But
can be possessed if they permit it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and she says could be possessed but oppressed by demons. At what point and how can you define the difference between
Oppression.
possessed and oppressed?
Okay, possessed and oppressed. Well, with oppression, I think we're all more familiar with oppression. If you're struggling with depression, I mean that's oppression shows up in so many different kind of ways, in psychological ways, discouragement,
Depression. All those.
depression. Oppression could be despondency. If you become despondent and you don't want to hang around people, we're made to be with each other. But if we want to just isolate ourselves and become some kind, that's not good. And I would suspect that there's some oppression in that. Boy, the list is just really, really long. That's why I started with that. Because I think that there's a demonic realm out there. There are times when I've come to church, I've had this happen maybe once or twice in 30 years of ministry or 25 years of pastoring, where I've stepped into the church and I could just tell that my people. I mean, as a whole, there might have been one or two come to church and were in a good mood, but the rest of them, they were struggling. And I actually kind of changed the whole tone of my message because I picked up on that there was like this black cloud over my whole congregation. And they just come in and you can tell if you pay any attention, they say hi, there's no spring in their step, there's, their shoulders are usually slumped, they're just, that signs of oppression. But not all that's demonic either. Some of it's chemical.
And she just wants to follow up and say, I know a person who is a Christian. I was there when they accepted Christ and saw the complete change in them. However, years and years later, it became almost evil and actually would talk in a voice sometimes that sounded like a pure demonic voice.
Okay. And that sounds like that would be more in the possession side of things.
If you wanted to throw to me, possession is somebody where you have no control over yourself anymore.
Yeah.
There will be times, or all the time, when you are totally out of control. You just cannot control yourself. So you're being totally and completely controlled by another entity. And
Well, and we read in the Bible, biblical accounts where they're throwing themselves in the fire. I mean, what person in their right mind is going to throw themselves in fire? And that would be a good sign of the demonic possession kind of thing. It does happen. I just caution us not to see that every rock we turn over, every door we open. That's not the way it is. But it does happen, and I think it's foolish to deny it. I just do. How are we doing? What's our time?
It's about time. We have about 30 seconds.
About 30 seconds to close the show.
I'm glad I looked over.
Great questions. Any more? Because we'll stay on and deal with this after the fact.
Not as of yet.
Okay. So let me wrap up Light for the Journey so we can keep the 30 minutes. Thanks for tuning in with us. What a topic. I want you to know there is no length to which God will not go to. There is nothing that will stop him from reaching you. If you're struggling and you think there is no hope, I want you to know there is hope. And the hope is found in Jesus Christ. How's that for a closing? If you don't have a church, I invite you to join us. If you live in Rochester, Minnesota, join us. If you can't get out, we stream our services live. You get it about 30 seconds late, but live every Sunday at 10:30. That is Central Time, not Eastern Time. So join us. And we're located at 410 28th Street. And what a time to get the hiccups. Thanks for joining in, and God bless you. And you stopped the recording has stopped, right?